Welcome to Rhythm of Previews, where we check out the preview chapters of Rhythm of War, the fourth Stormlight Archive novel. I am Danielle with the 17th Shard.
And I'm Marvin.
Hello.
Hi.
As always, there will be Rhythm of War spoilers, from here on out. And then we also have some minor, Cosmere references here and there. No major spoilers, but there will definitely be some references. So, what annotations did we have for the previous chapter, chapter 8?
Yeah, so as always, Brendan has written an annotation on Reddit for last week's chapter, chapter 8. And this time around, we had Moash in last week's chapter, and so he talked about how he approached writing him in Rhythm of War. And more or less, it boils down to him the chapter had to go through several revisions because he wanted to get the tone right, and even already in the alpha read it had to go through revisions because Moash and Kaladin talking and almost driving him to suicide or trying to drive him to suicide is a sensitive issue, and you have to get the tone right there. And basically what he wanted to bring across was, for one, Kaladin's mental exhaustion there, and that it's really that he has to acknowledge that something is wrong with him, and he does have to take a step back or take care of himself. But he also wanted to show that Moash, at his core, he still tries to be a good friend, but he doesn't really know how to rationalize it or how to go about it. And so he tries to help Kaladin that way, but he doesn't really know how to do it. And also Brent mentioned that his actual sort of problem, or what he really cares about and just doesn't realize, is that he just wants to justify his actions to himself and doesn't really care about their friendship, and instead just wants to that he abandoned Kaladin and sort of more or less betrayed the Windrunners. He just wants to justify it to himself, and that he's also not in a good spot there, Moash.
Yeah. And we do have confirmation that he was trying to get Kaladin to commit suicide. That was his goal. And that's actually even confirmed in this chapter in Kaladin's viewpoint. At least his perception of it.
Yeah.
Well, let's just dive right in. Okay. So our epigraph, Pewter expresses an attribute in force, augmenting the spren trapped inside, and it uses Stormlight more quickly than the other cages.
Yes. So I guess Pewter is, for one, the faster consumption of Stormlight fits with Elementic Pewter, which has a faster burn rate. And what else I noticed is sort of why it would be the one that expresses an attribute in force is probably, or maybe, in Elemency and Ferrochemy, the Pewter is the physical metal, sort of it really focuses on the physical, and for one it makes you stronger, and the Ferrochemy, it stores physical strength. And so maybe the sort of deeper connection there is that it helps actually help the spren affect the physical realm with the attribute they have. Is what I thought there.
That was my interpretation of it as well. I mean, I didn't know that it was going to be Pewter, but I knew that they were going to talk about the continuing metals, and this just makes sense. Pewter augmenting the amount of, in this example, they said flame spren would create heat, and Pewter cage causes that to happen. I wonder what a bronze cage would happen with a flame spren or something like that, you know?
Maybe a thermometer or something like that, or a
yeah,
because it's the sensing.
It could sense exactly. So I thought that was really, really interesting.
And I mean, sort of thinking along the Allomancy sort of parallels, it then makes me wonder what tin would have as an effect, because it's the opposite sort of in Allomancy, and so maybe it's something that is included in we have diminishers, like the pain fabric or pain reals. They reduce the sort of the attribute of the spren, so maybe that's what tin does, or maybe some other metal does that. So probably
and then all the different combinations of the different spren. It seems like it's more the spren and the metal that causes the Fabrial to act as it does, not the gemstone so much.
Yeah.
Because like in the last one, they talked about, was it Heliodor?
Heliodor.
Yeah. So and then she mentions, oh, you can use other gemstones. That's okay too. So it's more like the metal is the big part of the Fabrial that causes it to act however they want it to.
So yeah, maybe just the gemstone makes it easier, probably to like if it's aligned with the spren or something like that. But it's not,
or maybe
really
more efficient.
Yeah,
for burning of Stormlight. All right. After the epigraph, we go into Kaladin's point of view. It's very short, I think. Kaladin is exhausted. He's more exhausted than he would normally be, even while being infused with Stormlight. He just feels weak. And Syl comes up, tells him that Loran, another Windrunner squire, has spoken her third ideal while they were inside the burning building. And she asks Kaladin to go and congratulate her. He's just so tired, and he's still dealing with the aftermath of meeting Moash again and dealing with all of that and all those battles that he was in. So he just kind of waves it off, and he wants to sit and drink his broth. Syl explains to him, really in a sad tone, she doesn't know what to do to help him. Teft comes around, and he's nudging Kaladin to show strength to his troops, do his duty, congratulate Loran, and that's kind of just how it ends. He's really struggling at this point on the fourth bridge.
Yeah. Even after that Marsh thing, I thought that maybe Kaladin would be more willing to acknowledge that he is in a really bad state there and that he should accept some help, but he still is refuses to accept it. And it's getting a little exhausting to read Kaladin not dealing with it, or like he finally just has to accept some help. And even Syl here acknowledges it and says she doesn't know how to help. She becomes really desperate, and I don't like seeing her in that mood.
Yeah. A lot of people have a problem reading Kaladin's point of views because of his depression and his gloominess that people say, like he's broody and everything. So these chapters right now in the previews must be really difficult for those Kaladin kind of haters. But in my opinion, like I just feel bad for him. I feel like it's a build up to something really drastic that's going to happen with him. But I'm reading these more like Syl in this situation. I don't have depression. I don't know how it feels, but I do have friends who have depression, and I feel the same way that Syl does. I don't know what I can do to help them. I feel helpless. I feel like really sad and frustrated that I can't help when my friend is dealing with some pain that I can't even imagine dealing with. So I'm reading it more on Syl's end as a character because it's so frustrating to her that she can't help her best friend, her bond. So it's really sad. And I know that it's building up to something that's going to explode into a big plot line. So
yeah, it also makes me think that probably all of Bridge 4, like original Bridge 4, they all feel probably like Syl, and also they want to help Kaladin but don't know how to do it either. And it does make one wonder where it will explode, because it's not like where you don't see any sign as of now of it getting better at all. Like that's out of the question right now, but like it has to come to a head at some point. And
and Kaladin was really good friends with Moash, and maybe not to that level with the other members of Bridge 4. They all have a connection together, but Moash was actually Kaladin's best friend. And that's what makes it so strongly felt by Kaladin versus the rest of the Bridge 4. And I think he does mention that there's more Windrunners than he could establish a rapport with, like he did with Bridge 4. Like Bridge 4 was this close-knit group and they all went through the same thing, but now he has 300 windrunners. So he probably also feels a bit alone.
Mm-hmm.
He can't really connect with all of those people. And then the people in his bridge that he went through all of that with were not best friends with Moash. So they kind of just write him off as a traitor, but they don't really, they're not affected by it as much as Kaladin is.
Yeah, that I think was really noticeable with Teft there. He didn't really, or like he said, he can storm off or whatever. Moash, that traitor, and they better watch out for him. And if they see him, I don't know, they probably kill him on sight. While Kaladin actually, he froze again in that fight.
Yeah,
it's what Renarin has told Teft, that Kaladin apparently, or it looked like he froze, and Kaladin sort of finishes that sentence himself, again, that he froze again, and like he did previously with other people being apparent, like when Elhokar died, he froze. When apparently Lopen almost died a few months ago, which I wonder whether that maybe has something to do with Dawnshard, because we know Lopen is in Dawnshard, and so maybe as a consequence of that or something. Kaladin probably will freeze up again at some point, and at that point it will really cost him something. And
in Kaladin's mind, he even said, "I didn't even like Elhokar. I didn't even like him, but I froze, and I think that that's because Moash was there. It's more of his fight with Moash rather than failing to protect Elhokar."
Maybe, yeah. So
it's a tough That's a tough point of view to read. It's really kind of setting the tone for this chapter.
Yeah. So then we move on to another viewpoint. We get another Navani section here. And so we don't learn this right at the beginning of the chapter, or of her viewpoint, but they're on their way back to the Shattered Plains with the Windrunners. And apparently Navani is sort of in a small office, which is actually just a wooden sphere that is lashed by the Windrunners. And she's examining the void fabrial that Kaladin and Lift saw the singers use in the mansion. She notices that there doesn't appear to be a spren trapped in any of the gemstones. She doesn't recognize the metal either. And she also notices that the gemstones have an unusual cut. But what she does notice is that there are similarities between that void fabrial that we saw and the Urithiru gemstone pillar, because she actually notices that there is something that the gemstones have exactly the same cut, they have the same arrangement. They're also garnets, which the void fabrial is made of. And so she theorized that fabrial might have served to maybe suppress the fused abilities, so sort of the opposite of or sort of the analog of what the fabrial did for the Knights Radiant. Then she actually goes into the whole chapter, or the chapter is actually called Contradictions, and Navani's point of view really demonstrates that. She talks about how in patterns you always find some contradiction, and that's actually showing how the whole pattern works. And in fabrials, soulcasters are that exception, or that contradiction, because they don't really fit any of the patterns that they know of, the modern fabrials at least. And so she actually reveals sort of that in the cognitive realm, the soulcasters do actually have a spren attached to them, which it looks like it's sleeping, or like it has its eyes closed. They're actually figuring out how many of the Urithiru fabrials work, like the lifts and the warm water and what they have. But soulcasters and other mysteries are still eluding them. And that's basically when they then arrive at the plains. And she actually, at that point, finds a ruby attached to her table. And she noticed that it's actually half a ruby and it's part of a spanreed. And she then sets down the spanreed and it writes, and the other party of the spanreed implores her to stop basically using fabrials and to stop capturing and enslaving spren. And the other party sort of claims that they will make her stop if she doesn't do it on her own. So they are threatening her. And that's where her point of view leaves off, because she doesn't get an answer after that from the spanreed. So
Yeah,
What were your thoughts?
That was a really, really, really cool point of view. Learned a lot. That was what I would call an info dump.
Yeah.
But a really well written one, I think. Yeah, a cool one. So before we go into like all the juicy bits, I just wanted to say that Dalinar flying with the goggles and stuff, and Navani like, talking to him, I thought that was really cool. Like,
I want to see fan out of that so bad, yeah.
Because she's in this like sphere with like tapered ends, and it probably looks like a UFO to people on the ground. And she's like studying while she's flying. She doesn't even have windows or anything, and so she doesn't really care that much. Oh, she does have a window because she can see Dalinar flying. And Dalinar's out there, and she thinks that it's like his masculine ego or whatever. Like, he doesn't want to ride in the carriage, and he wants to fly. But like, honestly, who wouldn't want to fly? Navani, the workaholic, doesn't want to fly. But like, and then she was saying they should be flying with their feet first, and they're like, that just doesn't feel natural. So she's all logic, and they're like, just enjoy flying. Like, it's fun. I just thought that was a really neat little touch of, characterization.
And really and also touches on their relationship there as well. Like, it was really neatly woven in that it's like she compares Dalinar to a Chal being outside there with the windrunners who are like sky eels, and he tries to fit in but doesn't really. But she loves that Chal, and it's just cool to see there.
I love that she calls him a Chul.
Yeah.
So cute. I don't know. It's just a cute relationship.
I really want to see fan out of that, maybe. Dalinar as the Chal, or like on the outside with these ridiculous goggles, and
I'm like writing down all the stuff that I want to sketch because I don't want to do anything right now and spoil stuff for people and post it online or anything. But that is definitely a scene that I want to draw.
Looking forward to that. Yeah. So getting into some of the the plot there, what I found interesting, like when Navani also thought about the contradictions, and like she said that Jasna really likes getting into the secrets, but that she herself actually doesn't like secrets at all. And it was quite interesting there, I think, that she said that the Artifabrians are keeping their secrets for themselves, so they're not freely sharing them, which I find a little weird because they're at war, and it would be kind of really beneficial for them to share a bit of knowledge. So, yeah.
I liked the juxtaposition of Navani thinking about how Jasna approaches data research and how she does, because Jasna looks at the contradictions as disproving a theory, and Navani looks at them as a way of proving the pattern. I thought that was really neat. It's totally a good example of how differently two science enthusiasts could think about a problem.
Yeah, like I just really loved that whole beginning section of her talking about like, contradictions, and she always wants to find the pattern. Yet it wasn't, like you said, it was an info dump, but Bren just I could listen to or read a whole book of Navani just info dumping on us.
Yeah, and then she was looking at the Void Fabrial, and she's like trying to figure out what's going on with this, and it doesn't fit the mold, just like the soulcasters don't really fit the mold, because she can't figure out what the metal is, which is really interesting, because now we know how much importance metal has on the Fabrial. She can recognize the stones as garnets, but they don't seem to have spren in them. And she notes that mirrors the tower's Fabrial, and there's something which she doesn't quite put a finger on, but there's something that tells her that they do the same thing, which is kind of unraveling the mystery.
And actually, I think the use of garnets there is kind of interesting, because like if you want to figure out why garnets, like she doesn't really get why it's garnets. It could be that I could see that maybe in the modern Fabrials the gemstone is less important, because you actually sort of imprison or like trap the spren and really exploit its effect. But maybe for the more ancient Fabrials, like Soulcasters as well, we know that you need like emeralds for soul casting grain and things like that. So maybe the gemstones are more important there. And why garnet specifically? What I theorize is that like garnets, their essence is blood, and so maybe the garnet or the blood aspect sort of has to do with targeting humans or singers, because like we saw that the fused was not affected by the Fabrial. He was capable of still teleporting, but so maybe like it really it targets human blood or it targets singer blood. That's what I thought maybe is what the garnet does.
Well, she also posited at first that the Fabrial in readthrough might have been used to suppress radiant abilities, and then she immediately dismisses that. But what if that's the purpose of it? Like, what if that giant tower was originally, a Parshendi city or something, or maybe it was used to cause all the radiants and the normal people to be more of at the same level, like there's no difference of power or anything between them. So maybe that is what the purpose of it was, and not specifically to stop the fused. It's possible.
Yeah. I think it doesn't necessarily fit like all we know about readthrough.
That's true. That's true.
Like we know for one that, or at least the lore has it, that it was specifically built for the Radiants or something like that. Like in the play, they talk about the place closest to honor. So that might be a thing. But also like we have that one gemstone archive Windrunner who says that he wants to fly one last time or wants to fall down the tower one last time and things like that. So
true, that's true.
Yeah.
I didn't even think about that. The library that they had with the gemstones, like those wouldn't even really work, would they? Like if it was the same.
Yeah, I mean, depends on what exactly the Fabrial does. Like maybe it just specifically targets search binding or something like that. So maybe it was also just like a trap or something like that they could have triggered it if something went down. Could also be.
Like a protection against an invading force or something.
Yeah.
I don't know.
But anyway, I think I just want to like we know now that like that was also just an enormous revelation there that ancient Fabrials have a spren attached to them. That I think was a theory before, but that they actually have like a fixed spren sort of, and that they apparently are close to the Radiant spren. So I just want to see that Void Fabrial in the cognitive realm, and maybe it's going to be some higher Void spren who's sort of attached to it there.
Yeah, and I was kind of drawing parallels between those intelligent spren that have their eyes closed and the Deadeye spren who have their eyes like it looks like it's torn or something. I wonder if there's a way that it's being used to kind of mimic that and keeping them more in the physical realm rather than the cognitive, and so that they can't exist fully in one over the other. They have to be in either one or the other, and so they're kind of like comatose in the cognitive where they're not really able to respond to any stimulus. Because it's just weird that they mentioned that their eyes were closed. Like that's a very specific mention of they have their eyes closed, and that's mentioned with the Deadeye spren. Their eyes are scratched out. What is the connection between those two?
Yeah, true. So what I actually thought when I read that like it's one of the highest spren there, or like at least looks like one of the highest spren, was that we know that only sort of most of the spren are sentient but not sapient, so they are sort of animal-like and don't necessarily have or form thoughts and things like that, and that the higher spren are sapient, like we see them talking in Shadesmar. So what I have always sort of had as this theory, and I think others had too, is that what distinguishes sort of the ancient Fabrials from the modern ones is that they have a voluntary bond, more or less, or like they voluntarily say, okay, I'm going to give you my abilities in maybe exchange for Stormlight or something like that. And so that I really like that we see a higher Spren acting here, because that sort of fits with that. That also, like the Oathgate Spren, they see it as their calling, sort of, to protect or make the Oathgate work. So I think that would be a really cool, or I'd find it really cool if that was how it worked. Yeah.
And I knew that this was going to be a big ethical problem with Navani.
Mhm.
They called her a monster. Like, that's pretty intense. The person on the other end of the span read sounded like they were some kind of advocate for Spren rights, like an animal rights advocate or something. Like you need to stop enslaving them, you monster. You're the monster, Navani Colon. I don't know. I'm wondering if this is maybe one of the reasons that Shallan and Adolin are shown in the Shades Mar on the cover. Maybe that has something to do with it. This person on the other side of the span read is maybe a Spren.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. What I find weird about that would be that, like, if it was a Spren, or if they have a problem with them entrapping Spren in gemstones, why are they then using ephemeral to communicate with them? So it's a little hypocritical, I think. But I also like that it might be a Spren, because they also are in the know. Like they say, or like Navani says, that the other higher Spren are actually okay with it. They don't see it any differently. Like, they are just thinking about them like work animals, and that even the honor Spren don't have a problem with it. And then they say, oh, the honor Spren cannot be trusted anymore. So they, if they are serious about the threats and like actually care about the Spren, they probably were around for a longer time already. And so I think it would fit if they were a Spren, but how that then works is, I don't know.
Maybe it's someone writing on behalf of Spren. Maybe it's someone out there who knows the struggle and kind of commiserates with them about it.
Yeah. I mean, like, we also know that, or like Navani notes that the women's script that they use is like, it's a little scraggly and not all that neat. So what I also thought is that maybe it's a singer, like
possible, or a man.
Yeah, something like that. So, I mean, can't really theorize too much about that, because we literally know nothing about that person, but there are many possibilities. Yeah.
Yes. It's going to be a lot of Spren politics, I feel like. Because they're talking about how the honor Spren can't even be trusted. But like we know from earlier chapter that they're running out of honor Spren for the Windrunners. And they're, I wonder if that's kind of tied to it. Maybe there's like dissent between the different factions of Spren or something. And maybe there's this whole big civil rights kind of ordeal going on in the Spren, community.
Yeah, what actually that also made me think of is that, like, we know that the ancient or like the ancients were sort of, let's say, the heralds were also surprised what fabrials the modern, or how good the modern fabrials are, let's say that. So they didn't have this technology back in their day. So I wonder whether maybe they would have or could have had that technology, but they always, like, the faction who actually care about the Spren, let's say it like that, maybe they were around back then and sort of told them, no, please don't entrap Spren. It's not going to end well. Like, they feel like they're in a in a position to threaten them or threaten Navani. So maybe it is sort of like the, I don't know, Spren police who is out for them. And so the ancients didn't dare oppose them.
And I wonder who put that gemstone there. Like, they had to have known that Navani used white light, the diamonds, to work by, because they specifically put the garnet in a way that it shone red blinking so that she would see it. And it was like lodged into the wood of her desk, right? Wasn't it like attached with something?
I think it was attached with wax, I think. Yeah.
There was a physical person putting that there, and someone who must have been close to Navani, who would have known like which pod she was going to be in or whatever, and knew that she would see it once it started blinking.
I mean, they probably had to have, like, they had to be at the Shattered Plains, probably, maybe, because they had to see them landing, and so it's only started blinking then. So
yeah,
they probably either they were with them or they were at the plains already when they landed. So that's how it might have worked out. Actually, something I saw in the Discord earlier is that some people theorize it might have been Sleepless, which I guess would have worked really well.
Little bug carrying it around.
But I hope we'll quickly learn more about that, because at this point, tier running is just could go anyway.
Is this like another secret society? Oh
God.
Like a Spren Rights Society or something? This is just getting ridiculous.
Yeah. Oh, so we didn't really touch on it, but Navani also mentioned something else that really wants me to have Dawnshot already, is that they apparently found a large stash of Soulcasters in Amir, so probably Dawnshot material.
Something big is gonna happen in that, and it better come out before so we can read it.
It's going to be like, in one chamber they have tons of Soulcasters, and the other one there are all the missing shard blades, and another one there are all the missing shard blades. And
it's just a big fortress full, like a warehouse.
Yeah.
I don't know. I'm really excited for that.
Yeah. So one final thought maybe about this chapter is that apparently the Fabrials in Urithiru actually do seem to work like the modern ones in some way. Or at least they seem to have, or from the outside, they seem to do the same thing. They just don't work as effectively or as efficiently, maybe, because like Navani says that they made lifts a lot faster and also were able to optimize the design and things like that. So yeah, wondering just how deep into the Fabrial science the ancients were, really.
Yeah, and I wonder, you mentioned earlier something about how the Spren are enslaved in the newer Fabrials, and in the old ones, they're not as efficient. So I'm wondering if maybe they had more of an agreement or less total control over the Spren or something. Maybe the Spren was able to leave and then come back.
Yeah, I mean, maybe, because like we know that modern Fabrials, the metal is really important and things like that, and they actually have a cage around it. So maybe that's a factor, that they didn't have as much of a metal cage back then. But how they
were depending more on the type of gemstone that they were using rather than the cage.
Maybe. Just so much still to find out about Fabrials, like the epigraphs help, but they also just throw up so many more questions.
So let's move on to Shallan's point of view. This part made me like stop reading and stand up and like clap my hands. So I was very, very excited reading this point of view. I'll just like quickly summarize because there's so much and I don't want to like just rehash what we just read. Shallan and Adolin are traveling the plains across this like fortified bridge highway that they made. And they're discussing the aftermath of their encounter with Ialai. And Adolin tries to comfort Shallan, and eventually Vale has to kind of step in and take over because Shallan is so worried and kind of dissociating about sharing her secrets with her husband. When Shallan finally musters up willpower to talk to him and she really wants to share her involvement with the Ghostbloods, she pulls out Ialai's book, the hidden notebook that she found, and shows him some of these like passages. And there's some nonsense words that she can't quite make out. Words like Nalathis and Scadarial and Taldane and another one later on that she actually recognizes, Thydakar, or Thydakar. I don't know how to pronounce it. Thydakar. So Shallan continues reading, and she feels, later on, like an hour later, she really didn't reveal her connection with the Ghostbloods to Adolin after all. And she's worried so much about keeping secrets from Adolin, and that it's fueling this formless with a capital F. Another aspect of her personality that she is desperately trying not to create. And it's mentioned earlier in the chapter, but this one is where she's worried that the fact that she's keeping secrets from her husband is forming this formless.
Yeah, where do you start with this one? Like, oh boy, so much to unpack. But I'm just gonna start with that Shallan and Adolin are just absolutely adorable together, and it's
oh my gosh. Yeah. There is a quote that I want to read because I loved it so much. It was like, oh my God. She turned and pressed her face into his chest. He'd removed his jacket, and the shirt beneath reminded her of when he came to their rooms after sparring. He always wanted to bathe immediately, and she rarely let him. Not until she was done with him, at least. I loved it. She's really not that shy girl that she was in Way of Kings anymore. I really liked. I was so excited to read about Adolin finally, and so seeing the relationship like this, like very intimate, very comfortable with each other. At least with Shallan.
Yeah, like, and Shallan actually promises to Adolin that even Whale, who isn't really into Adolin herself, but that she does not get physical with anybody else. So
yeah,
Adolin.
Yeah, she kind of is like, you have nothing to worry about. Which I always thought that was a weird situation that they're in. Like when Shallan and Adolin are, being intimate. What the heck are Radiant and Veil doing? Like, are they just like, I'm not listening? It's interesting.
Yeah.
I wouldn't want to be in that situation personally.
Yeah, no. I mean, Adolin handles it well. He doesn't seem to have that much of a problem with it. Like, apart from maybe Whale not, like, he wants certain guarantees from the three. But like when Whale comes through, he immediately notices and sort of keeps his distance. So he really is trying to deal well with this and is managing, in my opinion. So that's.
But he's also being honest with her. He's being honest. Like, this is frustrating. It is a strain, trying to deal with this confusing relationship with, like, it feels like I'm with multiple people. So I like that he admits that he trusts her. He says, I trust you, and any secrets that you have, I know you're going to tell me eventually. And I really like that. But at the same time, Shallan feels like his love for her is a trap, and she needs to get out of this trap where he trusts her and she keeps secrets from him, and she feels so awful about it. And so it's kind of like he's trying and he's putting all this effort into the relationship, and she is kind of pulling away almost because of, she tries to tell him about the Ghostbloods, and she tries to tell him about this and that, but she can't. Like, she physically forgot. Like, her talking about Ayalai's notebook kind of did the deed and got her away from talking about the Ghostbloods. So,
and I mean, like, the thoughts about formless and sort of creating that fourth persona, or maybe sort of unleashing that fourth persona, maybe even like it already exists in some form. That really has me worrying about it, like, because like she calls it formless, and that almost sounds to me like it would end up like at the end of Oathbringer, where she really cycles through all these phases all the time, so that she doesn't have to lock down on one personality. And I don't think that would end very well. Like, the formless sort of would take over, and the other alters don't really have a chance to poke through anymore.
And she promised to herself that she wasn't going to create more. And this one is just coming into existence without her really trying to. And it also, like, a lot of people were theorizing that there's this fourth persona that she has. And I mean, that kind of lends credence to that theory. Like, there is a fourth. We don't know if that's the one that, gave Ili the poison or something. We don't know that, but we do know that she is creating another one despite her own best efforts.
Yeah.
And Formless might be working with them or against them. Like, Formless is just formless. Like, we don't know what that is. So,
yeah. And something else that is sort of related to Formless is that Shallan still has some secrets she herself doesn't admit, because she doesn't even know whether she knows them, sort of, because they're in her past. And it's just either it's something even more horrible than even killing her father and her mother, because she says, like, she even doesn't want, or like, what if Pattern learns, and Adolin and all her groups, or like the Lightweavers. So either it's something that's
so convinced that they will leave her if they find out. Like, this is something really serious. Like, this is more than just patricide, and like.
I wonder whether that's actually something even more horrible, or whether Shallan just thinks that it is, because, like, she is really good at lying to herself, and sort of she really always immediately jumps to, what's going to happen. She always assumes the worst. So maybe it's just something not mundane, maybe, but something less drastic than she thinks it might be.
Well, in this point of view, she even thinks that Shallan is a mask. Like, her original personality, she feels, is not really her. Which, I mean, who is Shallan? Like,
yeah, like, I think one popular theory is that her final truth will be like, I am not actually Shallan Davar. I'm sort of some imposter who replaced Shallan Davar at a young age or something like that. Which, I mean, this sort of really points in that direction, but I still personally don't like it. Like, it just feels iffy to me.
Yeah, I can't say that I wouldn't like it if it went in that direction, because obviously I haven't read that. But I personally don't like the theory, because I feel like it really cheapens the reader's relationship with Shallan and learning about her and stuff. Yeah, she has. She's got some issues. But there's some other stuff in this point of view that's not necessarily related to her. Like these pages in Ili's notebook.
Scadariel, what is that?
Scadariel. I love how she's reading them, or maybe Ili wrote them in like a Rosharan way with glyphs and stuff, like trying to make them almost symmetrical. Scadariel and stuff. So what was it? What was the other one? Nalathis.
Nalathis and Taldane. Yeah, obviously. So that's Nalathis, Scadriel, and Taldane, for those who didn't realize. And yeah, the Ghostbloods apparently know about these places.
And what's interesting is the other, like, kind of higher ups in the Sons of Honor and in the Ghostbloods might not know what those places are. So, like, some people do and some people aren't aware. Like, Ili obviously didn't know what they were. She was like writing the words down. She thought they were used like nonsense words. Maybe she thought they were some kind of code or something. She didn't know if they were people or places. And she's pretty high up in the Sons of Honor, or she was. So,
yeah, so that really makes me wonder whether Amaram knew what these were, because I sort of assume that she learned most of what she knows of the Sons of Honor through Amaram in some way, form, like either his notes or directly from him. So that almost makes me think that he didn't know. And maybe it was really just Gavada who was in the know about other places.
Yeah, the places that he saw. In the prologue that Navani was talking about, like, he's seen these places, but she doesn't really realize what he's talking about, obviously. Like, Who would?
Yeah, but like speaking of like Scadrial, Nethys, and Taldane, it's actually that sort of points in one theory that is commonly held that like we have the Shadesmar map and we have three expanses there. Like we have the expanse of the Vapors, which I think is confirmed as Scadrial, which makes sense because Mist is Vapors.
Yeah,
so
yeah.
Eric's nodding that it is confirmed.
Confirmed.
Yeah, then we have the expanse of Vibrance, which I think was rough out whether it was Warbreaker, but I mean, it makes a lot of sense that it would be Nalthis.
Yeah.
And finally, we have the expanse of the Broken Sky, which people then theorize because it would have fit with the star chart for once, and sort of just Broken Sky, two suns would fit with Taldane, I think. Eric's not looking amused.
I don't like that theory. Producer Ghost says I don't like that theory. I've never liked Broken Sky. Like, why can't it just be Ashen?
Yeah, would be another good one. But it at least would make sense that it could be Broken Sky, because that then would fit with Scadrial, Nalthis, and Taldane being places that the Ghostbloods have been.
Yeah. And Broken Sky kind of makes me think of like, you know, it's separated or something. So like night and day and stuff. So.
And it might even fit because we know that travel to Taldane in the cognitive realm isn't exactly easy because autonomy did something there. So maybe it's literally, it looks like a Broken Sky in the cognitive realm. Who knows? Yeah. But so that definitely lends credence to that theory. And it sort of fits with the items that Mraize has in his sort of trophy room.
Yeah, he has the sand, and he has doesn't he have like a flower or something?
Yeah, which we think is a Tear of Edgley. Yeah,
some spikes.
Yeah, so some of them definitely.
Trying to remember all the stuff that he had.
Yeah, it was sand, something like a golden hair, so probably a royal lock from Nalthis.
Oh yeah, that's right.
That weird flower, which might be, I'm not sure, it might be a Merwill or it might be a Tear of Edgley. We don't know which one. And he also has like a branch from Yolen, like Fane Life branch, but that's about it, I think. And of course, he has an Avia as his pet. But so, yeah. So that shows that the Ghostbloods, they don't only know about these places, they were there. So, yeah.
So, yeah, listeners, if you haven't read the other Cosmere books, now is probably a good time to get on that. Yeah, and in previous chapters, Ailai was saying something about like how Restares was probably next for the Ghostbloods to kill or something. Like she was thinking that he was going to be assassinated. And I said that I thought Shallan should go and try and find him and figure out what's going on with him. And I wonder if he knows about these places or not. Like if he's high enough that he's aware of them or if not.
I feel if any of the Sons of Honor know who aren't Gavilar, it would be him or them. I don't know their gender, but like it would just feel right for them to know, because like who else would know in their organization after Gavilar's death? But
right, and Thydakar, I don't know. Shallan had heard that before with Mraize talking about him as a person. The master at Thydakar.
And like Ailai actually theorized whether, like she said something like maybe Thydakar is a title, like Mraize might be, and if it was, she doesn't know which language it's from. But I think actually like Mraize calling him Master Thydakar, and Mraize is a pretty Thalen name, so I think that's just her theorizing and being wrong, probably. Because like Thydakar does sound mostly like a Roshar name to me, to be honest. So, don't know.
I don't know, because neither Mraize or Thydakar. I guess Thydakar kind of sounds Rosharan to me, but Mraize definitely doesn't.
Well, Mraize does sound kind of Thalen to me, because like the consonants are smashed together.
Yeah.
That much, but and we know that he is Thalen, so that would fit. But who knows? Maybe there are titles.
Yeah.
Just think that
Maybe
like
they're
especially
just like an assumed name, like a
Mhm.
pseudonym or something.
Yeah, but at least like that master Thaidakar, unless like master is just a rank there and Thaidakar is then the actual title. I think Thaidakar is an actual name, probably. But
And there's Ayatil, who
Mhm.
we know is from Scadrial, right?
Well, she's from Silverlight, but she has Southern Scadrian heritage. Yeah,
Right. And she had a title in front of her name too, right? Didn't they call her Master?
Race called her Babsk, I think.
Babsk.
Yeah, like the Phalant merchant thing. So who knows?
It's getting real.
Yeah.
Like the crossovers and stuff are like huge now. Instead of just being like a reference, like, would you like to destroy some evil today? Instead of just being a reference where it's like people who know would know, now it's like people who don't know about these things are going to be very confused. Like, what is this? I don't know. Like,
I actually read a really fun idea earlier on the Discord. Like somebody said that just what Shallan and Adolin name drop Nalthis in front of Vesha or like Sahel, and he just totally loses his mind. Like, where did you hear that name? Something like that would be, and maybe that's what prompts him to talk about mistakes he made. Who knows?
I know we do need to still figure out what's going on with Azure and Zahil. I can't pronounce things. I'm sorry. Yeah. I'm not an audiobook reader. There is a lot in this chapter. There was so much, and I kept like stopping while I was reading it and going. I was getting like goosebumps up my arms.
Again, the name dropped Nalathis, and like, that was just awesome. Yeah.
Yeah. And my husband right now is listening to Mistborn, and so I can actually share some little things with him because I'm really trying to get him to read Stormlight next. So all of this stuff is really exciting for me.
Pressure him into doing YouTube videos for us.
I know, right?
We need content.
That would be a comedy skit.
That's fine. Producer approves.
Yeah. So that was chapter 9.
Maybe a Wendy chapter next week.
Oh, I know. Every single week we're like, it's got to be a Venli chapter now. You can find all of these preview chapters 9 a.m. Eastern time on Tor.com, and we'll also let you know on 17thshard.com right at 9 o'clock when they come out Eastern. You can come and discuss them with us on our forums, on our Discord, in the comments. We love interacting and talking about things and realizing that we left stuff out. So please talk to us.
Yeah.
Bye.
See you next week.